So on behalf of Hingham's Security Program Committee and the 6 PTOs, I want to welcome you tonight to the Safety Forum. My name is Joshua Ross, and I am the president of the PTO here at the middle school. Before I turn it over to the chief, I want to take a minute, like I did last year, and give you a quick update of all the great things the PTOs do throughout the year. Last year at this time, I told you that the 6 PTOs had raised $230,000. By the end of the year, it was up to $260,000. This year, we are north of $200,000 raised through fundraising and donations. The money raised goes to numerous programs and activities throughout the year, including field trips, teachers mini grants, guest speakers for both parents and students, Math Olympics, Get Smart About Art, teacher appreciation events, and school beautification programs. This doesn't include the hours of public service volunteering sponsored by the PTOs. All these things wouldn't be possible without the leadership of the 6 PTOs. I know they hate when I do this, but can the following people please stand up when I call your name? Sarah Ader, president of the high school PTO. Megan Baker, who works with me as the vice president at the middle school. Sarah Abbott and Tom Cahillane, presidents of the Foster School PTO. Jen Benham, president of South PTO, and I don't think Suzanne Kronis and Becca Pierce and Allison Day. Suzanne is president of East, and Becca and Allison are presidents of PRS. Can we give them a big round of applause for all their work and commitment to the kids in the schools? It's been a pleasure to work with these people over the last 2 years and to put on events like this. I want to thank Chief Olson for reaching out to us for input and feedback around presenting the town's safety plans. Because all 6 PTOs have great relationships with the school safety resource officers and other safety officials, we not only had the opportunity to preview this presentation, but had the chance to sit with Chief Olson to discuss what parents would like to hear and how to structure this event. In fact, all members of the safety committee are more than willing to sit and listen to the suggestions of parents and community members, so thank you. This event is designed to be interactive, so please make sure you ask lots of questions. So without further ado, please welcome Chief Olson.
Thank you, everyone. I just really want to, on behalf of the committee here, I'd love to welcome you and thank you for the opportunity to come up and give you the opportunity to learn what we as a town and are doing to help make your children safe at school and throughout the town. On our panel tonight, we have Fire Chief Steve Murphy, Deputy Fire Chief Lou LaChance, Officer Mike Javasi is a member of our SWAT team with the Metrolec unit. Let's see, we have, I have to read, Principal Rick Swanson, East School Principal Tony Keady, MS Assistant Principal Dave Reardon, Business Director John Ferris, and we also have, I'll probably not pronounce it right, I think, Labillo, what is it? Jamie, we have Jamie down there. Sorry, I am not good with names. I apologize, but thank you. And we also have John Walden down there. He doesn't want to sit with us down here. He's sticking with his buddies from the school department. But thank you. So tonight's agenda, we're going to review what the highlights of what the committee has been working on. We've been working now for, seems like a long time, but it's been over a year and a half probably reviewing the safety policies for the schools. Review the type of training provided to the staff and the students, review the emergency plans and examples of emergency holding spots, discuss how the community can help with security preparedness and response on a day-to-day basis and also in emergency situations. At the end of this presentation, we're going to open it up to questions. So if you have questions as we're going along, just save them to the end, and we'll give you plenty of time because I figure there's going to be a lot of questions. So how did we get here, and why are we here? We had a meeting with the all-town PTO committee back in September of 2018, and we discussed the issues of, there seemed to be an overall lack of, anytime an event happened, the parents seemed to be they didn't have the information that we thought they needed to help understand. And I think in the world nowadays, we try to be transparent. We want to educate people as to what we're doing it, why we're doing it, and the more we can let you know, the more help you can become to us. Because as you can see from the movies, if you got a chance to watch it, there's a lot of moving parts that go on during incidences. We need parents to be aware of those, understand them, and also hopefully we can recruit them as help for different things, and that knowledge will also keep the area calm. So the questions that were coming up is what emergency plans are in place? What training are our kids getting? How can we ensure schools and parents explanations to students about school security and what the students would do in an emergency are all in sync? What do parents do in the event of an emergency? What can the community do to help, and how will they be contacted? So these are all areas that we're going to be discussing. Our security program committee includes all stakeholders and agencies that might be needed in a lot of different situations. We often talk about active shooters. You know, there's many reasons these incidents can happen. It doesn't necessarily have to be an active shooter situation. Recently, on the North Shore, they had the Colombian gas explosions going on, and that basically shut down schools, systems. These kind of plans had to be put in place. So we never know what's going to happen. It could be a gas spill somewhere, or it could be a chemical spill. So there's a lot of different reasons these things happen. It's not always the active shooter scenario. The plan, though, is the same, basically, no matter what the incident is. So the police department's involved, the fire department's involved, school administration, school building leaderships. It's important that each school is involved in this, from the principal through the teachers to the maintenance. School transportation's involved. And then we're expanding out into the other towns, because if we need resources for barricades, we're going to be calling for the highway department. If we have to block off streets, we're going to be calling for the highway department. So there's a multitude of roles that all the agencies play. So every town agency will have a role in what we're doing. So it is a complex thing, and those plans are in place. So John, would you like to take over for the committee's work? Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, just a brief description of the work that the committee's done. So school administration has been working with emergency personnel, not just for a year and a half, but we've been working together for years. And some of the more recent efforts that we've actually undergone, and we worked on that for a couple of years, or a year and a half anyways, is updating the emergency response manual. So this is an emergency response book. It sits in all of the classrooms in all of our schools, and it's available to teachers. Everybody's aware of it. Teachers also, they have staff meetings at times, and they go over the different pages about how they may respond to certain situations. And Dave Reardon will get into training afterwards, but the book is used within the schools. Additionally, the committee, we've also developed an administrative manual. So we have like other guidelines and more detailed explanations about what happens in the event that these events take place. These are really, how does somebody respond to the actual event, and it doesn't give you a lot of what's behind it from a teacher's perspective or from a classroom personnel perspective, simply because the idea of that book is, what do I do in the event of an emergency, and they want to be very familiar with those procedures. The other thing this committee's done, and we've been meeting, regularly, about every 3 weeks, we get together and we meet, and we've had different types of emergencies and different types of events that have occurred over the past couple of years. And when we have those events, we talk about them, and we talk about how the communications went, and what could we have done better, what didn't we consider, what maybe fell through the cracks. And we'll have a debriefing on that, and we create a document that can turn around and update the administrative manual. So we're in a constant state of evolution, and every emergency that presents itself will be different. So as we go through, we discuss best practices and protocols between schools. We have representatives from all the schools here. Elementary, we got high school, we got middle school. And our goal, it isn't just left to this meeting. It's not just having a discussion at the meeting. Afterwards, we all take it back to our individual departments, really. So the principals will come in for administrative council, and we share all this information. We may have another debriefing session, because at the end of the day, what's really key in all of this is that we continue to talk about possibilities or things that may happen, so that in the event that emergency does happen, we can plan better. We have a lot of continuing work. Just because we have a manual, just because we have an administrative manual, just because we're given this PTO forum doesn't mean that this work stops. It's an ongoing work, okay? We need to have sustainable, continuous training programs developed, and we're looking at that at the varying levels. The type of student that goes to training and how often that gets delivered on an annual basis, the staff training on an annual basis. We're looking at ways of preparing professional development that teachers and others can get PDPs for and credits, so that everybody gets, I wouldn't say exciting, because it's not an exciting topic, but it's a really important topic that people learn about this and understand and imagine what may happen in the event of emergency, because that imagination is key to preparation. So we're developing that. And then also, we were talking about enveloping all the town departments into this. And, you know, we will have some drills that will involve all towns. You know, we had the bus incident, and we were able to call 12 buses over. We talked about those things. We talk about those things. So when these happen, we're better prepared to deal with those. And then we also identify and secured resources for needed facility modifications. Okay, there's security issues that will need capital, and I'm always actively engaged in securing capital for the school department. And, you know, those security considerations would be considered within a capital process, and then also within a master planning process. So that's what the committee's really been engaged in, and what we will continue to be engaged in. And this is just high level. You will ask questions later, but right now I'd like to turn it over to David Reardon, who will tell you about staff training and the types of staff training that take place within our schools.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Just want to back up and give everybody a little bit of the history of where we've been and where we are now as far as our staff and faculty training. So in the early fall of the 2016-2017 school year, each school had a training from a company called Synergy 911. They're current and former law officers and also educators. They came in and gave us our basic system, our basic procedure to keep our kids safe in the event of an emergency. And this was an annual training that they gave us, and then gave us some learning materials. We went from there, and we have that training every year with our faculty. For example, at the middle school, it's always the October faculty meeting. We do our annual training, and then there's a refresher either in January or February at that faculty meeting. At this point, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Janowitz, and I are very, very confident that our faculty is well trained, including our new teachers that have only had 1 year of this training, because it's something that's important to them that they talk about, and the teachers who have now had it 3 years in a row are making sure everybody is on board and that they understand our procedures. So that was in 2016, and the basic concept is a stay in place, lockdown, leave, live. And that's how Synergy 911 described it to us. Excuse me. Stay in place, lockdown, leave, live. Anytime we use this, it's simply going to be a stay in place. Oftentimes it could be a medical issue for a student or a faculty member where we just have everybody stay in place. Classroom doors are closed and locked. Everyone stays in the classroom. And whoever is having the medical issue, we can get EMTs to them, and they're given privacy. It's a medical emergency. There's different levels and different things how we can use this procedure, but it's a very good, solid concept of keeping our kids safe, keeping our buildings safe. The next step there is the lockdown. This is where the classroom is locked, the teacher takes control. There's a safety spot in each classroom. Kids are familiar with that. They go to it. They stay there, they remain quiet. The training also continues for leave, which is rare, but our faculty is also trained that if the safest thing to do is to leave the building, then take the children that you're in charge of, be authoritative, be direct, and leave the building. Get to a safe place. And lastly is live or fight. If the threat is imminent, is impending in your classroom, be direct, instruct your students what to do, and together you fight the threat. Very, very rare, but we know it does exist in America today, and we're ready for it. Now, I want to let you know that the kids are not involved in the training that stay in place, lock down, leave, live. We've had in-depth discussions about what is developmentally appropriate for each age group, and Mr. Keating, Mr. Swanson and I are going to elaborate that in just a minute. With our faculty, we're all thoroughly trained in this whole concept. But the kids, they're trained in different various parts of it, whatever is developmentally appropriate for them. Just moving forward, again, this is a role play that we have during our training every year, where, to use the middle school as example, we start here, and then our faculty moves to 5 or 6 classrooms. And our faculty serves as students. 5 or 6 will be the teacher in each classroom. And we go through our whole procedure and make sure everybody knows exactly how to do it. Officer Ramsey is there. Our other SROs are usually there as well, giving pointers. And we just stay up to date as much as possible with this ongoing training. Month open space responses are always a challenge. We're at the point now, after doing this for 2 or 3 years, we're meeting and considering our security concerns for the auditorium, the cafeteria, hallway spaces are part of our plan as well. And once again, this is constantly coming up at our monthly staff meetings and staying in tune, but every building in the district has a refresher in January and February. At the bottom there, you can see the Synergy 911 website. Feel free to check in there, and that you'll have a lot of good information as well. Okay, so now we get to the part about what training do students get. I'm going to hand it over to Principal Keaty, and we'll just go elementary, middle school, and then high school.
Thanks, Dave. So my name is Tony Key, the principal of East Elementary School. Also joined by the other elementary school principals here, Dr. Wilcox from Foster, Mrs. Smith from PRS, and Mrs. Eastwood from South Elementary School. We all follow very similar procedures. So for us at the elementary school, the challenge is to be thoughtful about what is developmentally appropriate for students. Combined with what we know a fair amount of our students are dealing with on a day-to-day basis is significant levels of anxiety. So how do we try to prepare everybody to make sure that we can provide a safe environment, but not sort of exacerbate their anxiety? So the bulk of what the students are told is really to follow and listen to the instructions of the adult. Like Mr. Reardon went through, the staff gets thorough training. When it comes to the students, we want to be really thoughtful. We can tell you that we do the fire drills, we do talk about stay in place, but that's kind of the, when it comes to the students, we kind of just stop there. We spend a lot of time talking to the staff about how do we keep the children safe and how do we follow through the procedures. And once again, Mr. Reardon mentioned we do that twice a year, and it comes up frequently. What also is at each building, we have a crisis response team within each building. So that's staff whose sole job is to be part of any crisis that happens. We come together and implement the plan that has been put together. So a lot of resources in place. So we do be very thoughtful about what we do for students. As parents and caregivers, I would also encourage you to be thoughtful about your students' exposure to social media. When these incidents happen in other parts of the country, I really do strongly suggest monitoring your children's access to them, because at the elementary level, and most of you know this, kids will take things to heart. They make it about themselves. And so we will often see, after an incident happens in a different part of the country, students will come to school afraid or fearful of something happening at their school. So we encourage you to reach out to us. Every school has an adjustment counselor who's available. Should your child have any anxiety or concerns about coming to school, about school safety, we are here to work with you to support the students. So, once again, thanks very much. Back to you, Mr. Reardon.
Thank you, Mr. Keaty. Just to let you know, at the middle school, we do have our training at our October faculty meeting every year. And then usually a week or two after that, we have our security training with our students. Now, the 4 steps are just make sure the stay in place, the lockdown, leave, and the live. With our students at the middle school, we practice the stay in place and the lockdown, and that's where we stop. We find that that is the developmentally appropriate place to train our kids. They know what a lockdown is, they know what a stay in place is. How we handle it is the teachers are aware of the drill probably about a day or so in advance so they can adjust their lesson plans. It's usually near the end of the day, probably G block, and the teacher will let the kids know before this class is over, we're going to have a stay in place and a lockdown drill. That gives the kids a chance to ask questions, they have a little feedback with the teacher, they talk about where the safety zone is in the classroom. When the stay in place is called, Mr. Smith comes on the PA system, he clarifies everything, very calming voice. We're very sure not to make it a surprise drill or any sort of a role play like that. We're simply training the children just like we train the faculty. There's no surprises. We want to keep that anxiety level low, and we want the kids to be comfortable with this necessary training. We go through a stay in place, we go through a lockdown, and then we return to regular learning. Kids are given a few minutes to ask questions, and as always, are welcome to ask the administration and counselors questions as well. It often goes very, very well, and again, we're extremely mindful of our whole student body, where we have over 1,000 students here and such a range of comfort with this such a sensitive subject. But our faculty does a great job listening to the kids, trying to read them as to who's having a more difficult time and who is just okay with the training and does understand. So far, it's gone very, very well. We have that training in the fall, and oftentimes we'll follow up in the spring.
Thank you, Mr. Reardon. I'm Rick Swanson, principal at Hingham High School, and I would echo what my colleagues have said. Our training at the high school looks very similar to what's happening at the middle school. Staff trained every year, as they are in all of our buildings, and students who routinely do the drills that very similar to what you heard described for the middle school. Stay-in-place drills that are run on a couple of occasions every year, and lockdown drills that are run on several occasions as well. This year, we have a brand new school-based security team that's comprised of our school nurses, our school resource officer, 2 building administrators, myself included, and a couple of our teachers. And we have looked at ways to try to expand upon those drills and build upon them. This year, for the first time, we held a lockdown drill during passing time to add a wrinkle to the lockdown and to see how would our students respond if we had to call a lockdown drill during one of the unstructured periods of the day. And that happens 6 times a day as students are passing in between classes or on their way to lunch. And we had prepared them for that with a full explanation of how this might be a little different from a typical lockdown drill. Prepared our staff for that at a faculty meeting, and then we ran that in early December. We're currently discussing ways sometime later this year to look at combining an evacuation drill as part of that, and then potentially also giving students some additional training on the final stage of the lockdown, leave, live, which you had heard described earlier, the live portion of that, of what it would look like if we did get into a lockdown situation where we found that it was necessary to barricade classroom doors or otherwise respond beyond the typical lockdown drill, which in most cases would have students looking for the safe place in the classroom, which is identified in all of our classrooms with a red H sticker, and students know that in a lockdown, you make sure the door is locked, you turn out the lights, all of the students and the teacher move to that safe part of the room. But we're in discussion now about how we would train students to take it to the next level of live, and that could be part of a protocol that we implement at some point later in the spring. So I think for our next slide, am I giving this back to Chief Olson, or is it Officer Walden for this next portion? Okay, here he is.
Oh, the holding locations, okay. How you doing? John Walden, Hingham Police. I work in all the elementary schools, along with a lot of the private schools, daycares, nurseries, pretty much anywhere where there's little kids in town, I go. So some of the things we've been working on recently are holding locations for parents. So say an event happened like at the high school, say there was a lockdown, we use the high school as an example. I made these maps. We would meet at Wampatuck State Park. So it's obviously weather pending. These are default locations and anything can obviously change. But we went through each kind of location. We contacted the South Shore Baptist Church and we just determined that that was a pretty good spot for 3 of our schools. So the middle school, PRS and South. East would be the T station outside of Nantasket Junction on Summer Street. And then Foster, this is weather pending, would be the bathing beach and the boat ramp. So that's very important. Couple scenarios, if ever was an emergency, emergency response is huge for having access to roads and emergency vehicles being able to get in and out. So if parents flood the area, this is it's a huge thing to go to these holding locations because it gives us the opportunity where we don't have to. I know in Sandy Hook, people had to park 3 miles down the street, emergency responders to walk down there, and they couldn't get to the facility. So traffic jams and backups are detrimental to that. So we kind of came up with that, and the next one is just a generic map that we made for where you guys would go. So if, say, there was an incident at the high school, we kind of came up with some road closures. So you wouldn't be surprised if there's multiple police officers, barricades set up, like the chief said earlier, with some DPW sawhorses. I know our maintenance department, the school maintenance department, we've been working on some different blockades and barricades that will be set up at each school, so it'll be easy to maneuver around. And that's about it. We've been working on that. That was probably the last month or so. It's pretty much about it. I don't know. Anybody else? All right, it's back to me again. So one of the things that comes up is the parent roles. What can you do on a day-to-day basis when you come to visit any of the schools? And so what we ask you to do is to follow the school entrance protocols. Go through the main door, please. Go straight to the office to sign in, to receive a visitor's badge or lanyard, whatever the particular school uses. It's extremely important. Even if you're only checking lost and found, or you're going to the nurse's office, or whatever it is, even if you're on school grounds for any reason, just stop in the office and say, I'm here for whatever the reason is. Please make sure your contact information is kept up to date. Our email system is not a traditional list serve. The way email systems work for the schools is we pull it from your child's record from an X2 Aspen system is where your contact information is kept. So if we send an email out, we use X2, it pulls it from there. So please make sure that your email is always kept up to date. We do send out emails pretty frequently. If you haven't received one, or if you're not, please contact us. If you're aware that you're not getting information from school, you should be. That's extremely important. Once again, sign in. If you're going to pick up your child, sign your child out. Always wear the visitor's badge when you're on school grounds. We also ask when you're in the school, please kind of limit your visit to where you're supposed to be. So if you go into your child's classroom for a presentation, great, we'd love to see you there. What we respectfully ask is please don't take a detour and go visit your child's second grade classroom. You're supposed to be in 4th grade. We do get a little nervous if we see people kind of wandering the hallways. Even with the visitor's badge, we may ask you, how can we help you? Those kind of things. If you come on school grounds, especially at the elementary level, during recess, please do not go on the playground to say hello to your child or to greet them. We once again are trying to be very thoughtful and careful about school grounds, and when we see adults come on who don't really, we don't typically see there, we likely come up and ask you, can we help you out? What's going on? We prefer that you sort of stick to the business at hand. If there is something unusual that you see on school grounds, please by all means let us know. If you see somebody on school grounds who's normally not there, an unusual car, something that strikes you, by all means come in and let the office know, and we will contact our school resource officer. We have a phenomenal communication with them, and they will come and take care of it. Please also respect the posted parking signs at all schools. Virtually every single one of our schools has a fire lane, in the front, by the front door, please do not use the fire lane. That is for emergency vehicles only. And if we have cars parked there, it does strike us as unusual. So please just follow. All of our schools have visitor parking. We ask respectfully that you use the visitor parking when on site. Those are the kind of small, simple things that you can do to help us. And always, once again, questions or concerns, we always encourage you to come and seek out your building administrator or the school resource officers for further questions.
Steve Murphy, the fire chief here in Hingham. If an emergency happens, we know obviously everyone is going to be very concerned. You're going to want to know, is your child safe? You're going to want to go and pick up your child at the school or do anything else. One of the most important things we're going to ask you to do is be patient and please let us try to do our jobs, okay? So the first thing that we want you to do, and this is the reason that Officer Walden talked about that there will be certain access points that we're going to control, please don't try to come to the school. You're just going to become part of the problem. There's already going to be a lot of cars congesting it. It's going to make it difficult for the emergency vehicles to access or anything else. We don't need more parents coming in and blocking things down even further. So please stay away as much as you can, and that's not just the school that the event is happening, that's at the other schools as well. Because a lot of the administrators, especially the principals, if something happened at one school, the principals and the school administration team are going to all work together on that. So you may have principals and teachers from the other schools helping to kind of deal with that situation. So don't go to that school either because they're going to be, you know, kind of involved even though it doesn't necessarily involve that particular location. So stay away from all of the schools. The other thing is 911. Don't call to find out the status of a child or anything else because those people are going to be getting a lot more calls from sometimes, especially the kids at the high school level, they may be getting calls or texts from people within the building. We'd rather have those circuits available for that. Plus, they've got a lot of other stuff to do with radio traffic and everything else. Don't bog the system down by calling up to figure out if your child is safe, because honestly, they have no idea at that point. It's too early into the incident for them to even know that, and even the responders that are there, we're not going to be able to tell names or anything else too early in the event. Same thing with the school contacts. Please don't call administration. As I just mentioned, they have other jobs that they have to do. And the same thing, if you know your teacher's email, you know your teacher's cell phone number or anything like that, please don't call them up, all right? Let everyone do their job. The first probably 15 minutes at least to maybe a half an hour of any event, regardless if it's, you know, even something like a fire drill or a hazardous materials incident or anything else. The first 15 minutes to a half an hour is extremely important to allow the public safety folks to do their job and give them as much time as they can. Don't bog them down with as many unnecessary things as you can by trying to send emails and all that stuff. We understand it. You want to know the, you know, the status of your kids and all that stuff. We all get it. But, you know, let us do our jobs. Again, that's, you know, as soon as possible, people will be reaching out to you through either the school system, so X2 system. We also, the school has the ability to send out code red messages. We in the town have the ability to send out reverse 911 messages. So between that, social media, the media itself, we're going to try to get the message out as soon as we can, but you have to be patient for it.